Hello, first I want to point out Terminus, Imani and Lex are banned in PPL because of bugs. Lex wouldn't be picked anyway. The team shown on the left is always gonna be the one with the first ban and the first pick. Makoa, Khan and Torvald are the usual bans you always see in every match. But here, the Ashman is worthy of note because it's followed by a bumpkin first pick. So that means that VP has banned Ash because they want to control the spinner side of the map, and Ash, thanks to the shield, is the only tank that can possibly outpoke the Bomb King. Envy decides to pick Ruckus because he's the only other aggro tank left, and Genos because of Luminary. VP decides to pick Big Game Cassie to counter the Ruckus, and the Barrick, because in week 2 he had the upper end against the Inara. Thanks to the high damage that Barrick outputs, that gives so much pressure to the Inara that the enemy team would have to make a move. The rest of the draft is pretty standard, but the only problem is that Eevee is really great in this map because she can easily pressure the enemy high ground from the lava side of the map. This is an example of it. That's the ever first team fight, and the genius of Team Envy is sending both Ruckus and Eevee on the lava side to pressure the Cassie, rendering Big Game useless. For the rest of the match, Cassie is gonna get chased around, and practically she wouldn't be able to stand on the high ground for long, forcing her to the spinner side of the map, practically getting pincered from the two high grounds. Game 2, Envy bans Cassie to enable battering ram Ash. Envy's draft is really strong with the Genos buff applied to Xin and Ash, and that's a problem against Atira. The only other DPS would have been Shalin, and I think it would have been the problem even to him. So maybe instead of the Barrick they could have picked Genos, but I think VP didn't start to realize until the game after this one how strong Genos has become. Tara is good on Jaguar Falls, but the problem is she's kinda restricted in the close quarters area of the map. And also the whole team has to rotate when she gets pressured. As you can see, because of that, VP decided to avoid the left flank because of a possible Ash and Xin, and Liam with her sidelines that would probably outpoke the VP composition. They avoid the left side, and BK is pushing with the Ruckus. Barrick is in front of the Tyra, and Envy is pulling out of the fight because they were calling out Tyra's position. The moment Barrick left Tyra's side to push forward, Ash and Xin collapsed thanks to their mobility. VP decides to ban both Lian and Cassie because they want to perform a dive comp, and those two are the safest ones against a possible dive comp. Envy decides to pick BK and Kinessa because they don't want to play against a Torvald boosted BK, and because Strix is too risky against a dive comp, so they are kinda forced to pick Kinessa. Free Genos for VP and free Barrick too. Barrick with Genos is incredible. They picked the Strix for last with the Eevee because they knew Envy wouldn't have picked them, and Strix has the upper hand against the Kinessa because of the stealth, and he realistically has no way to be dived because Envy didn't choose to pick Ash, which is probably a great mistake. The Eevee with the Torvald is gonna be hard to have a good synergy with it because of Wormhole. you kinda have to apply it either as soon as she blinks, but you have to be close to the place where she's gonna blink, or before the blink, just a very minuscule time before, because the shield only lasts 2 seconds. And you'll see the first point fight is almost nearly lost because of that, because of mismanagement of the shield. The VP draft is overall way better than the Envy draft, and especially the Bomb King pick, just to take it out from VP, is not good, because Bomb King is not great against a dive comp like that, especially with a Strix in the back. Bomb King is all about bursting the enemy before he bursts you, but how can you burst it if you have a Torvald against you? So probably a Genos pick instead of the Bomb King would have been better, or having an Eevee instead of the Bomb King, because she's safer to play against dive. The only other safe hero against dive is Zin, but he's not that great in this map. He could be played, but I don't think he's that great in this map. Maybe instead of the Dumba, if they picked a Grover. I know this map is really open, and maybe against a Strix, there would be too many angles where to poke the Grover. But maybe against the dive comp, he would cripple the one diving, and also the defensive ult is pretty good. Maybe Envy picked Fernando because of the defensive ult. VP started the first point on the back foot because of shield mismanagement. As I said, it's very hard to perform, but overall they played really well and played so aggressively with Eevee that Envy had no way to pressure the streaks. But VP's comp is so Eevee dependent that when she died during the second point fight after they pushed, they lost the fight, also because of combat mechanic. During the last point, the third point, VP realizes that Torvald is giving out Eevee's positioning. So Torvald decides to go to the opposite side of the Eevee, faking out Eevee's positioning and giving VP the edge. Envy decides to use the same strategy as game 2, while VP understands how much strong Genos is and decides to prioritize the Genos over the Barrack. The Drogo's pick against Leon and Fernando is a little bit strange, and after the Zin pick is even more strange. Because of the Zin, Drogo's can pick Combustible, which is not that great in this map anyway, because he would be picked too easily. So he's kinda forced to pick Wormjets, but spoiler, he is gonna die a lot because of that. Because of Leon, and also because of Fernando countering his ult. They possibly picked the Drogos because they would have left VP the Drogos, and Envy would have had no Iscan pressure. I mean, if they picked the Drogos though, Envy could have picked the Victor, so I don't know. Maybe they thought that, maybe they didn't. The problem is that Envy decides to use Battering Ram Ashe against the Genos. Every single time that Genos grips the Ashe, Ashe is gonna lose her cooldown. She won't have the possibility to use it again, and she would lose the 90% damage reduction too. So prioritizing the Genos was a good idea, especially with the Zin. Envy understood how Genos is prioritized in this series, but I think that maybe they over-prioritized it. If they didn't ban either Torvald or Khan, maybe they would have the possibility of picking one of those instead of the Genos. Shalin has always been historically very good in this map because of how easy it is to stun people, because of how tight the map is. Envy is gonna pick Explosive Arrow but even without the stun it's gonna be easier to apply it. The control of the high ground is in Envy's favor, especially because of the Bomb King. The thing to note is that VP has two defensive ults, Fernando and Grover's, but Genos can counter them by ulting them at the right time. Especially the Fernando, if timed right, it's a confirmed kill every time. But overall, Envy has the better draft. VP knows that Envy's comp is better on the high ground, so they decide to go to the church, the low ground. This way they nullify BK's advantage, making it a disadvantage because the damage output that BK does long range is really low, while in close quarters he doesn't have to wait to detonate the bombs. So there's kinda a psychological battle. Either BK keeps going to the high ground, and VP keeps going low ground, so BK output is gonna be useless, or BK decides to go right side with Ashe, while VP doesn't expect that. But that is a very risky move in case VP decides to go to the high ground in that same moment. I kinda thought it would have been better for the BK to go to the low ground because overall all the match he struggled to output the damage he would have in close quarters, and I thought VP wouldn't have risked to go to the high ground. But instead, in the 3-3 scenario, they decided to go to the high ground. Team Envy kinda gets excited and Genos ults right away, which is a great mistake. Because Genos ult is meant, in this matchup, is meant to counter specifically Nando's ult, but also Grover. Kinda harder, but you can manage to pull it off. Not only that, but the entire team use every single ult except for the Inara ult at the same time, which is a very easy counter from the Fernando and Grover ult. And they lost the game because of that. Envy changes draft again. It's pretty strange, the Zim ban. It's an okay Zim map, but I don't think it's ban worthy. Actually, the Ashe, Drogos and Fernando combo is gonna be really powerful once they have the ults. Drogos and Fernando together, they will kill either Inara or Barrack while not losing Drogos because of Fernando ult. And Ashe ult could also be a free pick. The problem is the Genos. And as I said in the match before, choosing Battering Ram against the Genos, having your legendary nullified every single time you get gripped, it's not that great. Also, the problem of the Drogos is that he's gonna be in the same little cubby by the side of the point or on the stairs close to the spawn. I mean closer to the spawn, so that Drogos can get pushed. BK is really good in this map, and especially against the Drogos, BK is good at applying pressure on the cubby where the Drogos is probably gonna camp. But differently from the Drogos, he doesn't have to stay there all the time. So once Envy has charged their ult and keep them for the point fight, the match is gonna be in their favor, but they need to reach that point. The problem is they lost the first point fight because Drogos got pushed in the cubby. Fernando rotated to peel for him, but Inara walled him off. So he dies, and then Drogos dies. The MVP steamrolls, and they are about to push, and during overtime, to stop the push, Envy commits Drogos and Fernando's ult. So they obviously lose the point fight after that. Also, Ashe, differently from the match before, is getting way more bullied this match. Probably because the map is closer, it's easier to grip as a Genos. and I kinda put Envy too much on the back foot because they get pushed by the payload 3-1, and they will probably put on the edge because that would have been the match point, the final point that would decide if they would go to a map 7 or not.